Hi everyone, I am going to spend a few minutes taking you through your rental bed. Thank you for choosing to rent with us, by the way. You can see at the moment I'm sitting on what we call the carriage, and this part moves back and forth based on how many springs you have on your hooks. You have 5 different springs with your rental bed. They're coloured, so 2 reds, 2 blues and 1 yellow. The reds are a full strength spring, so the heaviest spring. Blue is a half strength and yellow being your quarter strength. And you have 2 hooks that are an option for you to hook your springs on. So the first level of the hooks at the bottom is your neutral level. That'll be the main point that you use. The next level up, that is to make it a little bit more challenging. So if you're feeling like you just wanted to work that little bit harder, or perhaps one spring, say a blue spring, is a little bit too much, you can use that lighter spring but put it on the higher hook just to get that in between. So a really great way to progress yourself without going too hard and adjusting a full strength spring up and potentially hurting yourself because posture goes because it's too strong. So good to know about that. If I push the carriage out a little bit and look inside the carriage, inside the railings, you can see that I've got 2 stoppers. You should have 2 stoppers, 1 on each side. The stoppers look like this, and you've got a few different holes that you can have the stoppers in. So we always need to have the stopper. So I should let you know, stoppers always need to be in at some point and make them even. So the same hole on both sides. The reason we always need to have the stoppers in is that if we didn't have the stoppers in, the carriage would be able to just sort of fly back in as the springs pull it back in at the end of an exercise. Without having somewhere to stop, it can then bounce back and the springs can actually unhook off their hooks, and that's not what you want. So stoppers always on. A good way to know about where the stopper should be, I would suggest having it in the first or second hole. When you'd want to start to bring it out, if you're a really tall person or maybe you've got really tight hips, if you're getting into a position ready for footwork, so that would be if you're lying on your back with your feet on your foot bar, you want your hips to be 90 degrees below your knees. So if you're a taller person and you feel that you need to push the carriage out to be able to find that position of 90 degrees, then where you are there, that's where your stopper wants to go. So you can pop the stopper back in. But generally speaking, it's footwork and short box series, which I'll talk about in a second when we get to the box, is when you would be moving the stoppers around. Okay, coming up here, let's talk about the box. A nice segue there. So this is your box. You pop it on the carriage up against the shoulder rest when we're using it, so that the shoulder rests are there to support it. This is long ways, we call this long box. And then up against the carriage, short box is this position here. Box is really great for beginners, or if you've got knee pathology issues, or maybe you're pregnant. We use it a lot to sit on to do arm work, for example. But you might have also use a short box when we're doing some ab work. So that would be if you're sitting on the box facing down towards the end of your reformer here past your foot bar. We do have an ankle strap. So coming out here, you can see an ankle strap at the bottom connected with D-clips, and it is adjustable. So when you're in a short box position, when you're sitting on the box, feet will be in the ankle strap. You really want to be able to have those legs nice and long and straight and lifted. So if you're finding, if you're super tall and you've got the stopper in on one of the first 2 holes and your legs are bent, that's when you're going to want to put your stopper out a little bit further so that you can push the carriage away and have more length for your legs to get nice and straight in that short box series. So that's the other tip when you would use the stopper. Popping the box off, let's talk about the platform and the foot bar now. I'm just going to move that out of the way slightly so I can get in. Your foot bar is adjustable. There's about 7 positions that it can adjust to. The best way to adjust it is to actually come out where I am now, out to the outside of the bed, pull it back out with both hands, and then you can move it down or up, depending on the exercise and what you're needing it for. Moving it down here, you can see, now I don't have it with me here, but you should have a jump board. There are 2 holes in your platform here. This is where your jump board legs will slot into nicely into your platform. And then there are screws on the outside of the bed at the bottom, on the underneath there, that you would tighten once the legs are in to make sure that that jump board is nice and tight and the foot bar will sit securely behind your jump board there. So it shouldn't really move as you're jumping. Then you would just unscrew those bolts to take the jump board out when you're not using it. Now you should have a platform extender that came with your bed as well. It's a similar size, maybe a little bit wider than your platform here, that is in upholstery, and that can sit here just above the carriage, in between your platform and the carriage. And you would use that a lot if you were doing some standing work, or if you had your jump board in and you needed a bit of extra space for that standing work, or if you were doing planks and this was feeling a little bit too rough on your hands and your forearms, you could use the platform extender to when you're doing planks as well. Moving up the bed to our shoulder rests here. These are adjustable, so they pull out and there's 2 holes that your shoulder rest can adjust to. So an inside if you're a bit narrower in the shoulder girth, or outside if you're needing a little bit width, and you can even turn the shoulder rests around to get different widths as well for your shoulders. So based on comfort level there, adjustable shoulder rests. Then you've got a headrest, also adjustable. So if you lift the headrest up, there's a block behind it. And then lifting that block up, letting that rest back on the timber behind it will allow it to be elevated there for you. So you can adjust a couple of positions there. That's the nice high one, or all the way down depending on comfort or the exercise that you're doing and what you're needing the headrest for. Your straps here, we've got long loop or short loop. Typically we'd use a long loop for your feet, short loop for your hands. However, we often say when you're going through programs with us that if you're needing to lighten tension, for example, when you're doing arm work, you may choose to hold the long loop instead of the short loop, and that's a way of lightening the load without adjusting your springs. A good way to know about where to have your straps, or the length of your straps. Once you've got your carriage on that stopper, I would aim to have the long loop onto the holders, and then having the rope reasonably taut, but not so tight that it's pulling the carriage up away from the stopper. So just tight enough that it's there firmly, but the carriage is still resting on your stopper. To adjust it, it's really easy. So grabbing hold of your strap, all you would do is lift the rope up out of your clip, and then you can pull the strap back towards you to lengthen it, or pull on the rope to shorten it. Once you've pulled that through and you're happy with the length, pull the rope back against itself on the clips, making sure it's in the clips, and that'll tighten it, hold it nice and firm for you. You do want to make sure that they're even, so you always want to check. Obviously if you're doing single work it doesn't matter, but when you get to your double work, when you're using both straps, checking that the D-ring here is in the same position on both sides. It can turn every now and then, which will make a difference to the length of your rope and make it seem like it is out of balance. And then check, on the holders that you've got both holders on the long loop rather than not one on the short loop, one on the long loop, and so forth. And adjust just so that they're nice and even, so that you don't feel imbalanced in an exercise. That's pretty much everything for your bed. These beds do stand up, which is nice and handy. That's in another video that Ben has demonstrated for you, but I really hope you enjoy your workouts with us on the app. Maybe go through some beginner ones if you haven't ever done reformer before. Ask us any questions. We're always here to help, and enjoy your Pilates experience at home.